Yeah, so that was that was fun. It was a really good first half. Probably the one of the best halves we've played in that first half. The second half was not as good, and I want to talk about some of the reasons before I get too far into this. So I'm going to go ahead and start recording just for my own purposes, and we'll jump into it. So Florida State beat Boston College by a score of 26-23. And really, the game didn't ever feel that close. Although Boston College made it fairly interesting towards the end there. I'm gonna go ahead and address the monkey in the corner there. The refs were not great in this game, to say the least. Yeah, there were some questionable calls there, especially in the second half that made life harder. There were some good calls, and Florida State just happened to be on the wrong side of the right call that felt wrong. But for the most part, if there was a 50-50 shot at something, it was going to be called against Florida State. But you got to give credit to the kids that fought through that. Credit to credit to Mike Norvell for keeping his cool and not getting a 15-yard sideline penalty that could ultimately affect your chances of winning the game. So good on that. Good job having everybody keep their heads. AB will not be able to join me today. He is at a funeral, unfortunately, and so it will just be me. And so let's get into it. Lots of unfortunate penalties at the wrong time, but I kind of want to talk about the football part of it. So let's jump into that. The first half, Florida State did a good job of spreading out the field, really challenging Boston College. So, like I said in the preview, BC is going to run a lot of this man-free look. And you saw them kind of go to this more and more as the game went on. But initially, they played a lot of zone. And one of the reasons that they did that was when you play zone, it allows you to have these defenders keep their eyes on the backfield. And that keeps Jordan Travis from scrambling. But that really wasn't a big deal all game. But what was Jordan Travis, there was one throw early on where he hit a tight end up this seam against cover 3, which is exactly, if you want to know how to attack a defense, you look where the shell is. So in this case, there's holes on the seams. So he made a few good throws down the seams. And then once they went to more man coverage, kind of later in the first half, you saw Florida State do a lot of these wheel routes, either from a slot receiver or from a running back, and those kind of get a pseudo pick here. So they weren't necessarily running straight picks, but they kind of acted as picks and got these routes open down the sideline, and that was a big thing for FSU in the first half. In the second half, Florida State didn't really go that far away from that. What ended up happening was Florida State. So a couple of things that happened. Boston College stayed in that man shell, this cover 1 man, and Florida State decided to run these guys off and try to get some good looks man on a linebacker. A few times that was open, and a few times it was closed by Boston College. There was one time where they did that, and this Mike, it looked like he wrapped on the running back, which would have been a big play to shut down one of the drives. Florida State also went to a formation that looked like this a fair amount. You saw this kind of late in the game, and they would roll and try to suck up these linebackers, which kind of gives you a clean one-on-one on the outside. You saw them kind of drive the ball successfully a few times doing this, kind of take that one-on-one matchup here. And JT was making good throws pretty much all game. So that was kind of my thoughts on the offense. why it stalled in the second half was you had a dropped pass here, you had one questionable call that I thought was a defensive pass interference that I didn't call, and you weren't able to convert. You had a couple of chances to get more points on the board, and you just weren't able to convert. Let's see. Do you think rotation on the defense was part of the reason Boston College got it going in the second half? So yeah, this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about defense. Florida State, I thought, played pretty solid defensively. It's kind of hard to be upset with the performance they put on in the first half. In the second half, they kind of got the short end of the stick with some special teams plays that got them bad field position, and then it seemed like they got an extra turnover on that fumble call that they didn't end up with. So some heartbreaking play calls, but in reality, what didn't help Florida State at all was Boston College in the second half was able to kind of start running their go-to play, this inside zone here that you saw, that we talked about in the preview. These, as the game wore on, these tackles were, so the whole game plan, the reason why it was stopped in the first half is that you were hoping these tackles won. And as the game went on, they won those matchups less and less. That forced you to start bringing your safeties in here, and it left your corners one-on-one without any safety help, which is how they got that touchdown to Flowers. So yeah, I do think a big part of the second half meltdown for Florida State had to do with the fact that you just don't have that much depth right now, and as the game wore on, and your defense had to stay on the field longer and longer, it just you just didn't have the guys in the secondary with Jamie Robinson out to replace him, and you ended up having to have guys like DJ Lundy, who's pretty good against the run, actually, play in obvious passing situations. There was like a 3rd and 15 where they basically just ran him up the seam, and he didn't stand a chance here. So so these attacks stopped, and really not a huge adjustment by Boston College. Penalties killed the second half. Offensive game plan, I thought it looked pretty good. So kind of a summary of some of the things that Boston College tried that I saw. So this is going to be kind of weird because I have 4-3 alignment drawn out here, but they went to this 3-2 look a lot. This is very similar to the kind of stuff that you see at Cincinnati and is now at Notre Dame. But they're going to have these ends play heavy, so they're going to crash down inside. They're going to walk up one of these guys, and so you have these 4 guys occupying all the major gaps, and that allows a little bit more freedom with this guy, and this guy to kind of flow with any sort of counters. So in the first half, what you saw Florida State do to kind of bypass this is they would have action going this way with the offensive line, but actually not counter that back, just have him follow this way. Eventually, they adjusted, and you hoped to be able to hit this counter backside, but they were ready for it. So good job by Boston College defenses on that. They did throw the ball a fair amount, but when Boston College had 7 people in the box playing man free, like at a certain point you have to be able to throw the ball. Like at a certain point, if they're just bringing everybody into the box, you can't run it. I don't care who you are. Like you can be the most talented team ever, but they were daring you to throw the ball and win those one-on-one matchups. In the first half, they were winning them. In the second half, they weren't. The block in the back. So a lot of potential holding penalties that we'll probably look at when we do the full film review. I thought they were getting away with a lot of holds. Yeah, losing Jamie Robinson early was a big loss. The refs were pretty bad. They felt especially influential in this game because the penalties kind of came at big times. One, for instance, was our right tackle had 1 foot kind of close to the line of scrimmage and 1 foot back, and they said that this foot was too far back, and they called a penalty reversing a 4th down. That was pretty big. And just a lot of little things like overturning the fumble, which kind of gave Boston College a free touchdown. But a lot of those calls, you can argue for them. It's just the chances that Florida State doesn't get the benefit of the doubt on so many of them is really just pretty crazy. So the penalties, yeah. So I think Jordan Travis is getting better by the week. I don't know anybody that would really disagree with that. He's not turning the ball over. He's making good throws, making those throws downfield that a lot of people were criticizing him for. Back to those wheel routes that I discussed earlier. There was one that at the end of the second half where McClellan had someone beat, and it felt like he just slowed down. I think it was actually a good throw, but they said he overthrew it. I kind of disagreed. But JT had a great game, and he didn't have to run the ball that much. You can see that he is progressing as a passer. Just the threat of him running gave us time to pass set, and he had plenty of time in the pocket. It really helped out the offensive line to have that. Plus, Boston College's D-line isn't very good. Yeah. Oh, let's talk about Kalen DeLoach. So Kalen DeLoach is number 20. He's a linebacker. We've had problems with the linebacker core all year. But every week we seem to say, okay, so Kalen DeLoach is the bright side of this linebacker core. We're seeing him kind of come along. And today, not only did he have a good game, but even the announcers kind of called it out. He looked really good today. He was making plays. You can see his athleticism. There's one time where he got isolated on a shallow route against their best receiver, and he gave it up. So that's a little bit tough. But yeah, all props to DeLoach. And if I'm Coach Marv and I want to keep my job, I point to that kid and say, look how far along he's come. Yeah. So I had to do a double take. I thought those refs were from the SEC. Yeah, Jordan Travis made a couple nice seam throws. There were some nice catches, so I don't want to hate completely on the wide receiver core. Jordan Young made a big catch on either a 3rd or 4th down on a slant route. That was really big, and I was like, oh, is that Jordan Young? That drop in that curl route on that 2nd down and 1, I think, was a big kind of blunder in an obvious spot where I think the wide receivers played a better game today than you typically see out of them, but that was a big problem. I think Norvell coached a pretty good game. What's up, Andy? The one thing that I disagree with Coach Norvell pretty consistently is I don't mind the going for it on 4th down. But I do mind the lining up in heavy and going for it on 4th down. I haven't seen this really work all year. I don't think that the strength of this team is saying we're going to win up the middle in a loaded box. So I don't like this play call. I don't mind the going for it. Like I said, I just don't think that this is the play I would have personally called. But I'm just some dude on YouTube. I would personally rather see them kind of spread it out, force the defense to commit. And this is where our offense is best, right? Spread it out, force the defense to try to account for both the receivers and the quarterback. Give Jordan Travis help out our offensive line as much as you can. So that's one of the advantages of spreading it out, is you can kind of hide the deficiencies of the offensive line, right? If you start pulling these linebackers away from the box, these safeties away from the box, it really helps out. I thought they had a good play in the pitch read. They only went to it once or twice. That was kind of disappointing. I thought you could have had more there. Like I said earlier, Boston College was doing a great job of shutting down your bread and butter counterplay, so you got to give them props to that. That seemed to be them saying, hey, if we're going to take anything away, it's going to be that play. And so that's where I stand. I think this was a very solid game. I think you saw Florida State, the first half especially, play a great first half. The second half, you had an opportunity to really have that game slip from your fingertips, and they didn't. So I got to give credit to the players for stepping up. You could see the defensive line was getting worn out. They were having to fight through some pretty questionable blocking technique by Boston College consistently. So outside of that, I think they did a good job. So Brownlee. Yeah, let's talk about Jarvis Brownlee. So Jarvis Brownlee got burned by Trey Flowers on that big touchdown. I wish they had showed a better angle. It kind of looked like a push-off to me, but it's possible it wasn't. He might have just got beat, and that was... So when you're running the kind of defense that's really common in college football, which is what Florida State runs, so if I believe they were in some kind of trips formation, when they're in trips, you have to bump people out, and what Fuller likes to do is he will have his free safety be responsible for this B gap. That's a very common, he's not going to do that. He's probably going to set his 3 tech to the field. But either way, he's going to, this free safety has some run responsibility in the alley. Most likely, that's kind of your run fits here. And he's also kind of responsible for number 3 coming across the field. Boston College was having success running the ball, which means that these safeties had to come up, which means that now this corners in one-on-one coverage with one of the better receivers in the ACC, and he got beat. So what can you say? Against Fuller's defense, that's going to be the Achilles heel, right? You can't defend everything. The way he plays his defense, which is really common, it's not something that's abnormal, is he's going to put this guy on an island and he's going to trust him to win that one-on-one matchup. Brownlee got beat, and they got a touchdown out of it. So you tip your hat to him and say, you beat us one-on-one. That's football. So that's unfortunate. You'd like to see us have someone here that's going to win that matchup. Maybe Amarion Cooper's that guy moving forward or whatever. But Brownlee up until this point has looked really good when he's looked good and spotty when he hasn't. Someone I do want to call out for having a good game was Akeem Dent. He's playing safety. This year he's looked a lot more comfortable in the safety role than he did in this boundary corner role. So he played a really good game. I thought a really solid performance out of him. Got to be proud of that. You got to be proud of this defense for stepping up despite losing Jamie Robinson really early, who's really that linchpin at the Sam position. The stud position, whatever you want to call it. So he's really big when it comes to being able to flex out on wide receivers or be asked to kind of fill in run gaps if they kind of get a more of a even set here. So I'm pretty proud of the team for stepping up despite losing him early. The targeting call sucks. I don't think that should be a targeting, but I think by the letter of the rules, it currently is targeting. So that's one of those where you probably have to have more problems with the rules than the refs. It's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how that goes. So The pre-snap penalties on fourth down, I think just a lack of focus there. They'd been cleaning those things up. There were one or two of those that I didn't agree with as penalties, but they're what they are. Do you think Brownlee should play next year when Hunter in the class gets in? Yeah, Brownlee's gonna probably find a place on the field. Whether that's the field corner, which generally has less man responsibilities, so you'll often see younger guys get put here. But right now, Brownlee's probably our most reliable cornerback. And the reason why he gets beat once a game is because he's generally on the best wide receivers. And so that's just a result of football and what has to happen. Bad news for you, Andy. Mike loves going for it on fourth when the situation makes sense. 100% agreed. Yeah, so that's a much more divisive topic than I would have imagined it is. No offense, Andy, but going for it on fourth down is just kind of the way things are going. And if you have more talent, a better team, I think that you can get away with being conservative. But I mean, Boston College went for it on fourth down, and that almost won the game. So I bet in that situation, when Boston College took that timeout and went for it on fourth down, you're wishing they were going to punt that ball, because I know I was. So think of it from the other point of view. If you're on the opposing team and it's 4th and 1 with a game on the line, do you want them to punt the ball away or do you want them to go for it? I want them to punt the ball away, which means that when I'm on offense, I should probably go for it. I think I agree with Brian here in the chat. Everyone sees the bad play Brownlee makes, but forgets the great plays he makes. Yeah, Brownlee's a solid piece. I would prefer for him to not be the number one receiver or number one cornerback as a young player. I think he has potential to be. He's got the limbs and the acumen to be a good corner, but right now we just have a really young secondary, and he's being asked to play a role that I think he can step into later in his career and be very successful at. And even right now, he's holding his own, but it's one of those things where you'd like for him to be able to be out there a year from now instead of right now. So how many bad officiating calls won't be on the condensed game this week? All of them. I would assume that almost all of the calls, except for probably the fumble, will not be on the condensed game, so we might not get to talk about it when we go through the condensed game. So, if someone wants to get a lot of views on YouTube, you should just go through the game, clip all of the bad calls, and put it on YouTube and say the worst called game in history, and you'll get more views than I probably have in the history of this channel. So, to anybody enterprising enough to go do that, there's your idea of the year. Jordan continues to improve as a passer and at reading defenses. This is what we've been saying all year on this channel. If you haven't been around us, me and AB have been on Jordan Travis's side all year. When people were saying he was garbage and he sucks, and I can't believe he didn't put up 700 points against Clemson, whose defense is legit and has pretty much shut out Wake Forest today, who's got one of the top 2015 offenses in the country. So I thought he's looked good all year. He hasn't turned the ball over that much. I thought there was a push off on that Boston College touchdown, but I don't want to harp on it. You got to be in a position where you're not chasing there. But to go back to Jordan Travis, I thought he's looked better all year. It just so happens that he's facing weaker defenses at the end stretch than he was at the beginning stretch. So I think that's one of the reasons he's looked a lot better. These receivers have been getting open more. But yeah, he has looked comfortable. I think that they're finding a rhythm as an offense and finding throws that he's comfortable making. So I think there's a lot of positive to go around with Jordan Travis, and a lot of optimism going into the end of the season and even next year. Jordan seems to be making a lot more anticipation throws. I think McKenzie is a huge reason for it. It's possible. It's possible to have someone who's had that much experience at a high level being a quarterback as kind of a mentor can really impact those things. That is something that KZ always was really strong in. So it's a good possibility that that's kind of seeping through to Jordan Travis. So why did they move the defensive end inside? So I saw a couple of plays where they moved the defensive end inside. So I saw some plays like this where they did something like this, especially on like third downs. What they were trying to do is most likely force some sort of slide to one side of the football and isolate this end. So I think Keir Thomas was over here a lot of times. They'd overload on one side and kind of hope that they can get a one-on-one matchup here, or if they don't adjust, get a free blitzer on a third and long. So that's the only time I really saw them move the defensive end inside, but that's something that I should definitely look into when we do the condensed game. So thanks for pointing that out, Maisie. Wide receivers are the least improved unit on the team. Yeah, potentially. So I out of spite one day I went through and accumulated all of the like advanced statistics, passing statistics for teams that Ron Dugans has coached on, and they do tend to get worse when he's on staff. So I didn't really want to put that out there. I'm not trying to flame people, but not significantly worse. But I think that the wide receivers are a crew that needs more talent and potentially more attention, because there's more to being a wide receiver than just catching the football. There's a lot more to it, and a lot of people don't recognize that. One of the things, so you guys are going to probably hate that I'm using this reference. One of the things Dabo said early in his career was that wide receiver is one of the most underdeveloped positions in football, and especially with the spread offense becoming as popular as it is, I think that was one of the most correct things Mr. Sweeney has said. So it's a position that I think is kind of lacking in the small details, and it's something that I'd like to see improved come next year, because I think it makes your life as a quarterback a lot easier. It's going to suck losing Keir and Lovett and Johnson, but that's just the way of college football. You got to reload and move on. They hit on the transfer portal so well that it gives you hope that they can find one or two people to replace them as the floor of that unit increases. The secondary should get better, so that should help kind of make life easier on the defensive line, and hopefully you can bring in maybe some JUCOs or something to fill in some immediate needs in the linebacker core. Wide receiver blocking is awesome right now. Yes, that seems to be what they focused on mostly. When I was at their spring practices, they did wide receiver blocking drills basically all the time. So I think part of that might just be a plan, right? Like we figure that we're not going to be a team that's going to be able to consistently throw the ball downfield. So we might as well be a team that can consistently break man coverage with screen plays. I don't know if that's really been a decision that's panned out for them necessarily, but I think that was the plan from the beginning and the focus from the beginning. So some of this criticism on Dugans may be undue because this might just be the offensive plans as a whole, but but we'll see. Is there a reason why I only get 144p for this? Oh, I hope I'm not streaming at 144p. That would be disappointing. So if I am, let me know. Other people, so I know that that's a problem. So pokey stop and turn on first TD and allowing Wilson to develop the block was a heads-up play. I forgot that play. I'm sorry. Will Shep, I'll take your word for it. So Is Coach AB here? No, that's a different Adam Brown, I believe. Um, yeah. We got two Adam Browns, and the one that is getting paid through Tomahawk Nation is not the one that's in the chat, but we'll excuse him. He's having a time. I think again you see that if Florida State's going to get shut down on offense, it's going to come because people can play man coverage on them and really just load the box and say throw the ball against us. Florida State found more success doing wheel routes. However, that success kind of dried up in the second half. You didn't hit those shots. You couldn't really get the running game going, which is kind of disappointing considering how poor they've been in run coverage all year. Boston College has. So, so that's the long and the short of it. I think defensively they played a good game, just got worn out by the end. And wearing out the defensive line meant that the safeties had to be more invested in the run game, which means that your corners have to be on islands. And so the accumulation of all of those factors means that by the end of the game, Boston College was able to find some gaps, make life a little bit more complicated for the Seminoles defense, and so that's kind of where we're at. So was there anything that surprised you in this game? I was surprised. So Florida State completely outplayed Boston College in the first half. They looked like the better team. Even in the second half, it felt like what was happening was Florida State wasn't getting those crucial plays, and Boston College was, to move the ball on a 3rd and long or 3rd and medium. Like in the second half, it was like Boston College was getting these 3rd and 14s, and Florida State wasn't getting 3rd and 1s. And it's like you're winning every down except 3rd down on both sides of the ball. So I thought I was surprised with how well they played in the first half. The second half was frustrating because it didn't feel fully in their control to be struggling as bad as they were. But it is what it is, and they won the game despite all odds. So I'm proud of this team, proud of these kids. And they're one game away from going to a bowl game. So do you think Corbin is playing hurt? He hasn't been very explosive. So I think Boston College said that they're going to stop the run at any and all costs. And so I think that's what you saw. And no running back could really get anything going, Ward or Corbin. So I think it is what it is. I think that I think in the first half of the season you kind of played defenses that were more okay with giving away some running yards, but they weren't going to let you throw the ball on them. Now I think you're seeing a little bit of the opposite, and teams are explicitly trying to shut down Corbin and Ward and say, Jordan Travis throw the ball on us. So he might have been hurt, but I think a lot of it's just, I think they're good running backs, but I think their stats early on made them look like they were going to be world beaters against any defense we played, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think they're really good running backs, and I think that even really good running backs struggle when the defense is watching out for them and really being aggressive. So the inability to move ball on kickoffs. So the special teams was pretty decent on punts, but kickoffs need work. What's my spin on Parchment versus Douglas? I think they're both potentially really good wide receivers. Douglas, I think you have longer, so I would focus on him moving forward. They've both showed that they can win one-on-one matchups, so that's exciting. They should have run the pitch option more. Yeah, I think when teams start getting aggressive in the box like they were just bringing the house, I think you want to be able to run the ball on the outside. What I was actually disappointed about was a lot this season is when they were kind of going to this, when Boston College was going here, and so they were kind of trying to clog up the interior. Oops. Like this. I wanted to see more down where you get this guy down blocked and can pull this tackle and get to the outside. Usually the running back would be over here. But I would have liked to see more of that. Just really challenge them on the outside. I think these linebackers were slow, and I think you had an opportunity to kind of get some momentum going in the running game if you were more committed to running the ball outside. And I would have liked to see more of that. But you can't complain with what they did in the first half because they were moving the ball all over the field. And even the second half, they were getting man matchups against linebackers in space. And if you can't win that, I don't know what else you ask for. Like, that's an offensive coordinator's dream. Yeah, our offensive line got manhandled in short situations, so that's kind of unfortunate. The defense played great, and I think you got to give all the credit in the world to Adam Fuller and this defensive staff they're just not the same team they were. They're not the same defense they were at the beginning of the year. I think we saw it. You're seeing a lot of mistakes get fixed. You're seeing like Deloach come a long way, which is huge for this defense to have a linebacker that's super that's a good linebacker. He's a good ACC linebacker. You have young secondary players that are playing their minds out. So all credit to the staff that were involved in developing those players. We're going to fire Papuchis. The defensive end have been great, but these special teams have been atrocious. I don't know. That's a really tough call. Very tough call. Can you get Adam to give us a segment on special teams for Tuesday's vid? I think Adam's least favorite thing is special teams, so I don't think he wants to particularly talk about that. Maybe we'll find someone that actually likes special teams because they win and lose ball games, close ball games, but it is not a strength for this team right now. 0 turnovers, so that's huge. So I will say it. This is what I'll say to the end of the world and back. The difference between this team at the beginning of the year and the end of the year isn't that there's more talent, isn't that X guy is playing significantly differently than he was early. It's that this team isn't beating itself with penalties or turnovers. They're consistently winning the turnover battle, and they have been winning the penalty battle up until this game. Was Boston College doing anything different in the second half to create space for the run? I think FSU was getting a little gassed. I think that they were also getting a little bit less gap sound. So you saw one of the reasons FSU was successful against the run in the first half was they were getting good penetration with these tackles and keeping their balance and making these tackles in the backfield. In the second half, you saw them kind of overreaching to try to get penalties, which kind of vacated some gaps and made it easier for them to run. I think I don't know necessarily if Boston College did anything differently. I'll have to go back and rewatch that, but that's kind of what I saw. I think it was some sort of function of just being worn out. So it was a stop hitch with Pokey coming back and Corbin that then threw the block to pave the way on that first touchdown. Yeah, I don't remember. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure you're making a good point, Will Shep. So special teams has been a disappointment. So that's something that hopefully gets addressed in the offseason. It's something that also improves as you get one of the biggest problems with this team right now is that second line. Because of 2 transition classes, that second group of players just doesn't have the talent or development level that you want at a place like Florida State. And those are often the guys that are on special teams. So right now I think you're just getting out-talented a bit on the special teams front. But that doesn't excuse losing special teams battles to Jacksonville State and stuff. So we'll see how that goes. This team's heart, not giving up after a 16-point lead, fell to 3 points in a matter of 5 minutes. It's great mental toughness. Yeah, I think these players seem bought in. They seem to trust Mike Norvell. So just very encouraging signs on that front. Hey, Kev, we got that safety because we punted after 2 straight pre-snap penalties on 4th down attempts. No punt, no safety. Yeah. You're very right, Andy. In this sample size of one game, those punts saved the day. And sometimes they're the right decision, and sometimes they're not. So you can't always count on your defense to get a safety. What was the biggest factor in this game besides penalties? I think offensively, you won some one-on-one matchups that were really key that you don't win, that you haven't won earlier in the season. I think defensively, your defensive line dominated and got tired by the end of the year. By the end of the game, and your second string defensive line right now just isn't capable of performing on a similar level as your first string. Miami win feels like it sealed the fate of Manny. Can we go 2 for 2 with the Gators and Mullen? Potentially. Their defense looks really bad. And that's the key with this Florida State team, it seems, is the better the offense is able to perform, the less time the defense has on the field, which means the higher concentration of time you get to keep your first string defensive line in there. And that's really huge to the success of this defense. Naturally, some substitution has to occur, but the more successful the offense is, that means the defense gets to stay fresher. You get to have Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas on the field more often, and that changes everything. Mullen was supposed to be a good hire. He's a great offensive mind. The guy knows what he's doing. I legitimately think that if I was an NFL fan, I wouldn't be upset if he came in as like an offensive coordinator. The guy knows what he's doing on offense. He just doesn't seem invested in the recruiting game. Okay, so I think I'm going to jump off here. We're getting a little bit derailed, but exciting game. Good job by the Seminoles. We're going to come back in a couple of days and do a film review of this game. It's going to be really exciting, and hopefully we can uncover a little bit more about how FSU was able to come away with this win. So thanks all that joined me here, and